Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today we are talking with Kevin Riley and Gabriel Villegas of Ryvil Logistics. We sent out a survey a few weeks ago to our listeners asking for feedback and ideas for the podcast. One of the suggestions that was sent to us by several listeners was that we should interview someone who was new in the business to get their perspective on what it's like becoming a FedEx contractor in the year 2023. Well, you asked and we delivered. Kevin and Gabe have been contractors for FedEx Ground via their company, Ryvil Logistics, for less than 60 days. Each of them has a military background, which is how they met, and are both well-educated, having received their MBAs. In this episode, we talk about their experience vetting different opportunities over a 2-year period, their initial experiences in the business, expected and unexpected, and what they're hoping to achieve with this new endeavor. I'm pleased to bring you Kevin Riley and Gabriel Villegas. All right, we're here with Kevin and Gabe from Ryvil Logistics. Guys, thank you for meeting with me.
Hey, thanks for having us, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Ryan.
So we sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago, and one of the main things that people have requested, listeners to this podcast have requested, people want to hear from someone who's been in the business a relatively short period of time to hear about what their experiences are like coming into the business in 2023. And so that's how I got hooked up with you guys. You've been in the business for 60 days as of next week, so not even 60 days yet. Is that right?
That's correct. It's very new. It's very raw. It's very fast. So yeah, I think your listeners are going to get what they ask for.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys meeting with me. Before we get into any of the FedEx stuff, I like to start with each of you individually. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. What was your professional background before you'd ever heard of FedEx contracting?
Sure, I'll go first. I started out of college as an Army intelligence officer. It's actually how Gabe and I met. So I was in almost 6 years, got out as a captain, variety of roles in the military, logistics, planning, tactics, strategy, all that kind of stuff. Got my MBA afterwards and then entered corporate America and kind of like some leadership rotational background or programs, a lot of operations stuff. And then went from, big Fortune, 100 company to the startup world, which is I'm in now. So a couple startups and just started one recently, all in the operations space.
Yeah, and Ryan, I had a similar beginning to Kevin. After college, joined the military, Army intelligence officer. Met Kevin there. We kind of spent some time together there. After the Army, I went to work with a pharmaceutical distributor, and I worked in operations there for about 4 or 5 years. Got to spend some time with logistics there and last mile deliveries. And then a few years ago, kind of switched gears, switched industries, started working for a government contractor on a VA contract. So working back with veterans and giving back to veterans how I could. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years now.
So that's an interesting background. So college, Army intelligence, MBAs, and then each of you had different types of experiences in the corporate world. How did you hear about FedEx contracting? It sounds quite different compared to everything else that you were doing before.
Yeah, I had a buddy in my first corporate job. We were both post-MBA programs, rotational programs, and he was getting started in the space. His wife actually is the AO, and he kind of, helps manage behind the scenes because he had a friend, one of your earlier guests, who introduced him and his wife to the concept. So in some ways, there's kind of like, that Bill Belichick coaching tree, from Jason Larson's the other contractor. And so he told me about it. And I was like, and like everyone else says, like, this is crazy. I didn't know like that's a thing. Everyone assumes that those, trucks are owned and operated by FedEx. And it just sounded like a really appealing way to, I always tell people that this is me and Gabe kind of tunneling under the walls of corporate America, want something that's our own and something that's, has you in the driver's seat, I guess literally and figuratively, and just sound like a really, really interesting prospect. And so we that friend of mine got me into it and just started exploring from there.
Yeah, I remember this was right after the pandemic started, and we were kind of locked in our homes, and we thought, let's schedule some calls every other week to talk about what we're going to do to keep moving forward and any ideas, and just kind of not letting that stay at home lockdown set in. And Kevin brought up Adam one day and this idea, and we were like, let's explore this. Let's go from there.
So, Kevin, you had mentioned that you liked a few things about the FedEx model when you'd first heard about it. You liked the idea of being in the driver's seat, and you liked the idea of doing your own thing. What steps did you take to research this? Again, logistics as an industry is huge. I mean, everything that you buy was on a truck at some point, probably multiple trucks. So it's a huge industry, but the FedEx Ground portion of it, FedEx Ground contracting, it's almost like a well-kept secret. A lot of people don't even know about it. So when you'd first heard about it and got turned on to it, what are some steps and different resources that you were looking at to try to educate yourself on the concept of FedEx contracting?
Yeah, so I talked to that friend of mine a lot in the early stages, and then Gabe and I decided to employ the services of Route Consultant as their consulting program. Their new investor. Period of time you're assigned a consultant. They give you trainings and they connect you with all kinds of resources and vendors. And I think Gabe and I realized even though we had strong backgrounds and either business or logistics or just operations and planning, there's no substitute for knowing the space and talking to experts in any way, shape, or form. And we wanted to make sure that we covered our own weaknesses, and we continue to do that to this day. And so Route Consultant really was that resource for us. And I mean, we were with them for probably 2 years before we found a route that we liked, that had the right, size and distance and BC on board and price. So I feel like their consultants are kind of ready to get rid of us at the end, but I honestly don't know how we could have done it without them kind of laying out those breadcrumbs along the way to, make those connections with those vendors and provide that training, just kind of give us the heads up of what's coming our way.
Gabe, you have anything to add to that? 2 years, talking to a consultant for 2 years before you ever actually pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, it was quite the unique experience, right? I'm sure they haven't seen that kind of makeup of a team before. It's got its advantages, right? Kevin and I working together, being able to kind of attack things from two different angles, two different thought processes, but finding a viable business to purchase proved to be challenging, right? We've got to work out of two geographical boundaries that we might be able to find an opportunity in, and our requirements, that we were looking for, given our kind of startup, very young grassroots approach to this, was restrictive and kind of proved a challenge. So we outlived a few consultants from Route Consultant, and luckily we got it to the finish line here.
So tell us a little bit more about that. So, obviously during that time, you're probably looking at opportunities. You were already engaged with Route Consultants, and I'm sure that they're reaching out to you, saying, hey, there's this new opportunity that popped up. What do you think about this one? What do you think about that one? But you held off for quite a while. What were some of the specific things that you were looking for? What were some of the boxes that needed to be checked for you individually before you were really going to get serious about an acquisition opportunity?
Yeah, I would say there was, a price point. We're looking at this, dipping our toe into the water, and it's very inspiring to hear these contractors that come on your podcast and talk to others who have ballooned so quickly and got to the point where this is their full-time gig. But for Gabe and I, this is currently our side hustle. Intended to be our side hustle. And it does consume much more time than you might envision. So we wanted, size and price mattered, because we wanted to say all right, let's test this. Let's see if it works for us, and if it's something that we can snowball and grow from that initial, seed we plant. We wanted something that was geographically close enough so we could be there regularly and learn. So we kind of drew a circle around our respective, cities. I live in Chicago, Gabe's in Miami, and so like, all right, somewhere within a 3-hour drive. Fortunately for Gabe, that's pretty much the Gulf of Mexico, so there's not a lot in his area. But for me, we found one in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, that was close because I do believe you can do this as a remote owner. I think Jason Larson talks about it. You can be absent, but you can't be absentee. I'm taking this call right now from a hotel room in Oshkosh. I came up here to receive our new trucks and to check in on the business. And every time I'm there, I meet someone new who provides like a good connection. So I met another new AO today, and we got on a text thread and just swap resources and experiences. So I think it is that was on our checklist. Size, location. And then we went to, being remote, we need to have a BC in place, right? And that is kind of like a financial trade-off too. Like, all right, we weren't ready to pay so much for an operation that we could just start and have like 25 routes and an ops manager layered on top of BCs all at once. And so, it's a sacrifice. Like, all right, we need someone on the ground, and we learn from her as much as we have from, 2 years of route consultant. So those are really the 3 boxes we had to check, size, price, location, and a good BC that came with the deal.
Gabe, anything to add to that?
No, well said. Those 3 boxes kind of is what made it, what made our journey kind of take those 2 years, right? To find that proved to be challenging. We had a couple we thought were going to work out, and they fell through. And then finally, this one in Oshkosh kind of went through.
Even more fundamentally, why FedEx? Obviously you heard about this through someone that you already know, and so you started to research it. Did you consider any other industries or any other types of businesses that you may have invested in?
Maybe not invested in. I think Gabe mentioned, we started those calls during COVID, lockdowns, startup ideas or with anything to create our own. And then, it was more what you think traditionally, like I have this idea, get off the ground kind of thing. So FedEx, I think the appeal was that it was, ready made, right? Like we're not going to be the guys who are going to create the next great app or social media sensation or whatever. But what I liked about FedEx was, the established brand. You don't have to worry about the sales and the marketing. You have one customer. I'm going to use the word simple lightly because it might be simple, but it's certainly not easy. That it really does boil down to like people and trucks at the end of the day. And so we dealt with that in the past a lot in our military experience and our civilian corporate world experiences. And it felt like it was a skill we could transition. Of course, there's nuances to every space and industry, and FedEx obviously is no exception. But I think we were drawn to that established brand, that single customer, and then it's something that we could really. It's something that's tangible, right? It's not, some very complex, nuanced, distribution like computer program or something like that you have to, put all this overhead into to get off the ground. So I think that was the appeal for me, at least.
Yeah, agreed. Taking over or purchasing an existing established operation, was also an appeal, like Kevin said. Just kind of stepping in there, not having to worry about accounts receivable, just simple deliveries and operation. Vehicles and personnel. It was all very attractive. That's kind of what pulled us towards it.
So there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast. Most of the people who listen to this podcast are already FedEx contractors, but there's a lot of people who tune in who are not contractors yet. They're in the phase where they're trying to learn as much as they can about the business and consume as much media online as they can to try to get a feel for whether or not this is something that they want to do. So you had worked with a broker, and you had mentioned that you were in contact with the broker for about 2 years before you finally decided to pull the trigger on something. Once you actually found the specific opportunity that checked all those boxes for you, walk us through the process. What happened? So you said, yeah, I think that one looks good. And then what? And then what happened from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of your first interaction with that. You are at the mercy of FedEx at all times. So we signed the purchase agreement. I think it was we got like an offer accepted in July 22. And then, we're getting ready to ramp up, and we wanted to be there and established before peak. But of course, the terminal is kind of a bit more, we don't want to take on new contractors, right before peak. It's just setting you up to fail, et cetera, et cetera. So they kind of kicked the can down the road a bit. And then, winter hit. And so it, just kept dragging out. So we were kind of ready to go and expecting to go like August 22, but it didn't stand up till March of this year. And it's just, you really are at the behest of FedEx. We did our senior manager interview and had all the paperwork lined up and ready to go, but it was just kind of a negotiation as far as timeline went, as to when we actually got to get our hands on it.
And the specific operation that you were looking at that you ultimately ended up purchasing, what was the current owner situation? Were they looking to get out of the business completely? Was this just a part of their business that they were selling off? Were they going to stick around with you for a little while and show you the ropes? What was their situation?
They're not getting out of the business completely. I think they have a bunch of different kind of logistics operations, not just FedEx. I think they dabble in the Amazon space and some others as well. So I think they're kind of, buying here, selling there. I think they were concerned, they had volume concerns in that area. So they sold before they knew about like the express overlap and some of those things that are coming down the pipe. And so, but they did provide or offered to provide, 90 days support, and their ops manager has been a great resource for us throughout. I keep in touch with the previous AO periodically, and Gabe talks a lot to their ops manager. Say, hey, how do you navigate the situation? What vendors do you use for this or that? And he's really been a great resource to help us learn. And it really is. I mean, I've learned like everything in this business is like who and how willing are they to help mentor you and help show you what's been done before and what's worked well before.
Yeah, all about relationships. The manager's been available. Not much communication before we took over and we started operations, but since that March 11th date, very willing and able to get on the phone and talk anything through. So much appreciated that relationship with the manager and the support that they've provided since we took over.
Yeah, and I think new contractors will learn as they come in. Like you really want to get your hands on everything. And you really want to start planning, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait in the beginning. And a lot of these, and I guess it is to your benefit, a lot of these existing contractors don't want to spook their team or whatever too early. So, while we would have loved to use those 6 months to plan and get to know the team and visit and get all of that, all those reps in before standing up, it just wasn't really on the table for our situation, just to provide continuity for the operation.
So you had mentioned 6 months. Is that how long the transaction took from the time that you said, yes, we think this is the one, let's go, to actually being closed and having the keys handed over figuratively? Well, and literally, I guess. Yeah,
almost 6 months from the time that we actually closed on the deal to stand up.
Quite a unique situation there, right? Like that's not normally, I don't think, the length of that process, but the perfect storm timing with peak season and winter and the caution on FedEx side kind of dragged that out. That itself created some challenges from a preparation too. Kevin talked a little bit about willingness and wanting to get in on what the operation is like and getting prepared for that. That kind of delayed us in that. And then we had to pick back up at the beginning of the year and things had changed, right? Vehicles had been, had more wear and tear on them. Employees had changed over. So it was a little bit of a readjustment when we picked back up in the new year to kind of relearn the current situation of the business.
So you go through the process, the keys are handed over. and the business is yours. Now, you talked a little bit about the importance of having a mentor and people around you who know what they're doing, who you can lean on, if anything, just for advice. But tell us about those early days. I mean, as soon as it was yours, what were your initial experiences like those first couple weeks in the business?
Yeah, I feel like we're still in those first couple weeks, but I joke with my wife a lot that, you know, we vacillate between overconfidence and absolute panic. Because there is a lot that happens at once, and like you have so many ideas and so many things you want to do, but you still have like a business that needs to operate, and you don't want to just, you know, drive your new BC insane because you're kind of feeling each other out as well, and you don't want the team to have too much drastic change in the beginning, just because you can't afford at that stage to have that much turnover, right? You kind of gotta, you know, boil the frog slowly for some of these things. I mean, if you see something wrong, you should change it immediately, but you know, put safety at risk or something like that. But you know, Gabe and I are everything. I always say this is the first time I actually felt like I've used my MBA, because we are finance, we are HR, we are personnel, we are operations, you know, we are technology, you know, we're CTO, CFO, COO, and CEOs all under one umbrella. So there is a lot just to get set up, and like every day you learn something else. Luckily, our terminal, like, you know, we have a pretty seasoned senior manager, you know, he's nearing retirement. And so he has kind of taken a bit of like a you know, a very like mentorship role, and the people under him in P&D are, you know, they're very good to us when it comes to walking us through and understanding that we're rookies, and making sure that, you know, we know what's going on. But it is fast and furious, and so far it hasn't really slowed down. You know, Gabe and I are both working full-time jobs on top of this. So it's a lot of, you know, mornings, nights, and weekends, you know, that takes time just to get like the admin set up, just to get, you know, the financing and all the pieces in place, so you can just focus on the business. And then again, just to make sure that your operation is running all at the same time, because it's not like you can just pause everything and be like, all right, now we're going to do it differently from here on out. You really do have to kind of, you know, be patient, as frustrating as that can be sometimes.
Yeah, the relationship with the manager, the BC, is also huge, right? So we enter this relationship with this manager, and we hit the ground running day one. Little to no communication before the fact, and here we are, you know, introducing ourselves, and let's get to business. And that's, you know, she holds the key and the knowledge to maintaining the operation there. So it's been just as crucial to learn and kind of work these relationships, so that we are learning at the same time as we're trying to give guidance and trying to help the BC improve and adjust to this new relationship that we all got going on here.
Yeah. At the same time, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll say you become callous very quickly too. It's like, I remember like the very first time that we had a day where like we struggled to meet service or whatever, and you realize that like later on you can just, you know, get those packages delivered the next day and get caught up, and you're all right. Like almost every single contractor, you know, bends and doesn't break. It's okay. The first time that happens, you're like, oh my God, like we're going to fail. This is a disaster. What do we do? What do we do? And then, so the next time it happens, like, oh yeah, we handled that last time. It's fine. You know, just got a plan in place, put contingency. Let's make sure we button things up. You know, a vehicle breaks down, we adjust here and there. But the first time those things happen, you just haven't experienced it before. So you do, you know, maybe have an outsized reaction compared to your more 10-year contracts or, you know, contractors. So we probably sound a lot like, you know, babes in the woods compared to some of your more seasoned guys. But if they can remember back that far, you know, it's those early days is a lot going on, and you don't know what's a true fire until you've been through it.
Well, you could be right, but you know what? Most of the really successful business owners who I've had the opportunity to rub shoulders with, both inside of the FedEx Ground contractor network and outside, a quality that they all share is that they are paranoid about threats to their business. You know, the business owners I know who are really on top of it, they're always thinking in their head, what could be going wrong, what could be threatening my business. And I don't know if those reactions from you are outsized or inappropriate or not, because look, here's the reality with FedEx Ground contracting is, they don't provide a tremendous amount of training up front. If you communicate with FedEx Ground, they're not going to tell you, all of the little things that it takes to be successful in the business, but they will penalize you if you have too many safety infractions, if your people aren't making their drop-offs or their pickups and they're skipping doorsteps, and there's all kinds of things that can happen that have a serious effect on your business. And if you allow too many of those things to continue, or if there's a certain level of severity, they can threaten you. You could lose the business, right? This isn't something where you could struggle along and, just kind of piece things together for too long, because there's always that looming thing that, FedEx could decide one day, well, you know what? You're out of contract. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. So we need you to leave, and you obviously don't want that conversation to come. So,
yeah. And I think that's what's so scary with the early days, is that there are landmines everywhere, but because you're new, you don't know where they are. Whereas maybe some, seasoned guys know what they've stepped on before and how to deal with it. But Gabe and I, there's definitely been some sleepless nights as we worry about what the next thing is that we don't know about, just because it's there and it's going to sneak up on you and you're going to learn.
So real quick, how many trucks or how many daily routes does this business put out each day?
Yeah, we probably average around 5 a day, 6 on a heavy day. And then our business is about to expand 8 to 9 routes at the end of this month.
Congratulations. Is that another business that you're purchasing, or is this, are you taking it over for free from FedEx?
Yeah, it was just kind of like luck and timing. They redrew some CSAs in our terminal to provide contiguous zip codes. So we had divided a couple zip codes before with a contractor, and they went and kind of redrew the boundaries just to make things more efficient. We literally, had a divider down Main Street that, they were the other contractor and we were on the other side of it. Just wasn't that efficient way to run an operation. So they redrew, and it just meant, more territory for us, but hopefully more efficiency and profitability as well.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you guys had mentioned earlier, Kevin, I think it was you who had said you feel like this is the first time that you've actually put your MBA to use, because you are the CEO, you're the COO, you're doing HR, you're doing the financial planning and all of that. I've been involved with this business for, 12 years now. So I started with this company in 2011. And in 2011, 2012, we were calling FedEx contractors on the phone. And back then, we were just saying, hey, you're a FedEx contractor, you need to buy these trucks. We are a lender, allow us to, have us lend you the money to purchase those trucks. And at the time, the typical person on the other end of that call, the typical FedEx contractor, was somebody who had been in the business probably since the RPS days. They had maybe 2 or 3 trucks in their operation, one of which they drove every day. And their background was as a truck driver. That's what they got started in. And at some point, they went from being an employee driving a truck to having their own route. And then maybe they had expanded to 2 or 3 trucks. And there was a lot of, 20-year-old diesel Freightliner step vans. That was what everybody used back then. And they had duct tape and the whole thing on there. And all of the customers that we were talking to, they were really good with a wrench, so they knew how to work on that equipment. Fast forward to today, I'm seeing a lot more people like you guys, such as yourselves, where you come from a professional background, you have an MBA, and I have no idea if you're good with a wrench or not, but it doesn't sound like that's really a core piece of your value that you bring to the business, whether or not you can do that. I mean, you're working remotely and you're more overseeing things from a business perspective. Do you guys feel like that's necessary? I mean, you mentioned that you're getting value from your MBA. I asked the same thing to Jason Larson, by the way, and he said, I don't know if you need an MBA, you can learn it, but what do you guys think? I mean, you're in this for 60 days. Do you think if someone is thinking of getting into the business that they need to have some sort of formal, business education or experience running another type of business, and to what degree?
Gabe, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't think a formal MBA is necessary. I think it's, having the mentality to just do it, right? And coming in with a mind frame of succeeding is really what you need. I think it does help to have MBA experience in ramping up and coming up to speed. I mean, we've seen this before, and we've learned about all these different areas, HR, financial literacy, and kind of how to manage the business from a financial perspective. And I think that allows us to kind of look at it differently that maybe it has been looked at in the past, but I don't think that it's a requirement to be successful.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you need both skills in any operation. So, mine and Gabe's weakness is, the wrench turner, right? So it's good to have people on the team who understand at the front lines, maintenance and what's going on with these trucks and what kind of, terrain, if you take them out on here, it's going to, result in this type wear and tear or not, or who can, do some maintenance themselves just to save that money. But I do not think you need that formal background. I mean, in many ways it helps because you do have that experience and that acumen. But in some ways, from the driver's perspective and the BC perspective, you come in and try to act like a big, Byzantine corporation right away. Like you could drive some people away. Like they just don't operate that way under those nice confines that we think of in big corporations. But on the other side of that, like FedEx is a corporation. And so I found that just, our time in the corporate world does allow me to like communicate a bit better, understand some of the decisions a bit more, compared to, some contractors who might be a little bit more hesitant or resistant to change, because like that change is never going to stop, right? And we can kind of communicate and be that translator to our drivers and our BC about what is going on and why, and that it's happened before, it happened again, and everyone survived. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you need it. You just need that learning mentality, and it's a lot to do up front. It's just you got to be careful to get sucked into one thing. If you are a wrench turner, you don't just focus solely on maintenance. You do need to pay attention to the numbers. And, if you pay attention just to the numbers, make sure that you're also looking out for the people and the vehicles and everything else. So it really is a whole, 360 holistic endeavor.
Let's talk about the employees a little bit more. So I've been involved with several companies being bought and sold. And anytime that happens, it's perfectly natural for the employees of the business being bought to be a little on edge. There's a lot of unknowns whenever that happens. What were some of those initial interactions that you had with the team, with the drivers, and what were some things that you were kind of purposefully being intentional about in your communications to them that you really wanted to reassure them? And I don't know if putting them at ease is really the right thing, because obviously, well, maybe not obviously, I guess you could tell me, but were you thinking of making changes right away, or were you going to pretty much keep things steady? And, regardless of the answer to that question, how did you package that and communicate it to the team?
Yeah, I mean, we were advised, and this was the benefit of having someone like Route Consultant who's done this, hundreds of times. Don't commit and try to change too much right away. Drivers, whether this is, anecdotal or apocryphal or not, are very resistant to change. And so we definitely took that advice and came in and say, hey, like if it's good and it's working, we're not going to change it. If there are things that you all don't like, or, we think is going to make everyone's lives better, like we can change it. Our angle was one, to provide that stability and that continuity. We reiterated a dozen times, nothing changes with your pay, nothing changes with pay, nothing changes with pay. Because they talking, drivers quit right away. But at the end of the day, it's like they have families and they need jobs, and like, they're not just gonna walk out the door on day one. That's like fairly, I think, unlikely with a new AO, particularly if they're keeping their BC and they like their BC. So we went up there for stand-up weekend, and we brought that ops manager from the previous owner with us. And so he helped facilitate that change and transition. And one of the values, I think, of being small starting out is that there's a face to the company. So these drivers had never met their their previous owner. Whereas Gabe and I have made a lot of effort, to text them, or Gabe does a lot of the recruiting and talk to them and check in. I've gone up and done some ride-alongs here and there and helped deliver packages and just show that like I'm willing to learn and willing to get my hands dirty here and there. And it's good for me too to learn. So we try to build a relationship, and that can't last forever, right? As you're running an operation, you can't, you don't want to be on text threads with drivers all day long. But in the early stages, we'd really want to provide that stability, that the continuity for things that work, but then also kind of put a face to the company and build those relationships, because we need to learn. We need to absorb information as rapidly and as varied as possible. And that's how we've approached that.
Yeah, Kevin's been instrumental here, Ryan. I mean, he's been up there a few times. I think before we came in, the previous owner, I think you mentioned this, Kevin hadn't been there in a few years, if at all. So it was good for them to see us, to kind of know that nothing was changing, that we're here to kind of understand what they're doing, and then building those relationships. Kevin being up there every other week, spending time, going above and beyond to not just, sign the checks, but also get to know our team, get to understand what they're dealing with. Has been huge. I think it's going to pay. I think it's already paid dividends in kind of maintaining the driver core that we've had as well as we have, and it'll continue to do so as we continue to recruit and then keep these drivers long term.
What are some challenges that you guys have experienced here in your first few weeks as contractors?
I think it's the same challenges that a lot of contractors experience everywhere. Number one is certainly recruiting. I mean, it's no joke that it is a really competitive job market. So we mentioned that we are ramping up. We need more drivers to do that. We've had some natural turnover expected in this business. So you always kind of feel like, that's, you talk about being paranoid earlier, like that's what keeps me up at night, right? We're going to have enough drivers, and we have enough bench and roster to pull this off, because that just makes the BC's life easier, makes everyone else's life easier. But it has been like a real struggle. You even pay competitively, you change your job descriptions, you offer bonuses, and you have people who will, show up for the interview, but ghost on the road test, or, work a couple days or weeks and find another job somewhere else. Like, that's really been, to my mind, and Gabe can speak more to this because he's doing most of the recruiting piece, the number one challenge. And then two, like the maintenance piece is no joke either. It's, make sure your trucks are in good working shape. If I was to do it all over again, I think I would have come in with a much newer fleet, as opposed to, just taking over what the previous contractor had. Because you do realize that, these vehicles aren't ready to go. And if those issues, the older they get, the more mileage they get, really does add up. So it might be a tough pill to swallow, like a larger CapEx, but you do save in fuel, you do save in mileage. So we're looking at starting to replace the fleet over time, in the next couple of months to a year, probably sooner than we anticipated with our original plan. But the recruiting is huge, and I don't think it'll ever go away unless something changes from like a macro environment perspective. And it's also regional too. So our area, Wisconsin, has super low unemployment, and so that's created a challenge for us.
Yeah, Kevin said it perfectly, Ryan. The number one and number two and number three are all recruiting. Start early from day one, open up those recs, get out there, understand the landscape, what the competition is like, being competitive. And then there's also the art side to it, right? It's starting off on the right foot, the relationship with these potential drivers that you're speaking to, these applicants, and building that relationship out of the gate is just as important. They're going through many interviews if they are in the job market. So you have to sell them on an attractive venture, and being able to have a good experience while they're on the team, right? So it's if I can go back to the beginning, I tell myself that start recruiting harder, earlier, and just live in that world from the beginning. Not that we didn't, right? We've been in there, but it's that important. And then on the fleet maintenance side, newer trucks if you can, new fleet if it's possible. The maintenance cost adds up pretty quick. And then another essential piece is to make sure that you are getting vehicle inspections done before you take over, so that you know exactly what you have in the queue from a maintenance perspective, so that you can start methodically attacking that when you do take over and you start the operations and you don't have any surprises coming through.
What are some surprises that you had early on? And again, you guys are less than 60 days in to this thing. Is there anything that really jumped out at you that was different from what you were expecting going into this?
I think we knew it'd be hard work and we knew it'd take a lot of time, but it's just FedEx really doesn't give you time to catch your breath and to get your bearings. So, I mean, maybe we're in a unique situation, but we're 60 days in and we're already planning for ramp up, which is great. We always wanted growth. We wanted more routes, just makes us more profitable, more efficient. But, you like to think you can spend more than 60 days learning a bit before you undertake something like that. And then we're also going to have to change terminals later in the summer to another distance. So it's going to be a whole other, recruiting and logistic challenge to relocate. So those are really like the big surprises. And, that second one is, it's daunting, it's looming. We'll find a way to get through it, but, it's really something you don't expect coming in when you think, all right, I got my space, I got my location, I got my team. Now let's keep them happy and keep these trucks running and go. Like there's always something that's going to change. Those are really the two big surprises that we have ahead of us.
How far away is the new terminal from where you're currently at?
An hour.
An hour? Are you going to have to find new drivers?
It is very likely. Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, we're preparing. Worst case scenario, Ryan, is like an entire, new team is what we're preparing for. Obviously, it'll probably be something in the middle between that and a partial replacement of the team, but it is going to be a huge geographic change. So we're anticipating some new team members coming in.
Yeah, because so if any of your listeners or any of these salty contractors have dealt with the situation before, please email me and Gabe. I would love to talk to you.
Yeah, and if you guys would like, we could actually put your email addresses in the show notes for this podcast. So anyone listening, feel free to reach out to these guys. It's an open invitation. But yeah, I mean, and obviously, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, look, I know it's an hour away. I really like working with you guys. It's not a big deal to me. I've got a fuel efficient car. I like listening to podcasts, the Routing for Success podcast in the car. So the drive time, no big deal." You would allow them to continue to work for you. So this is more from your employee side. The fact of the matter is that most people just aren't like that. A lot of people are probably going to say, look, I don't want to commute for 2 hours each day, an hour to and an hour home. I'm going to find something a little closer to home base.
Exactly. Yeah, it changed our stem miles too, so it's a lot of drive time. And yeah, that's really the main concern is the employee experience and losing any core members of the team. That'll be difficult. I guess the silver lining is it's a brand new terminal moving into. It's I think it's being prepared for that express overlap, and so there's a lot of benefits there. But yeah, it's not ideal to have a situation where you might have to, where your team might have to decide to walk away when you're just getting started.
So you guys have a lot on your plate right now. Again, you're new into this. You're trying to take everything in. It's probably like trying to drink water from a fire hose right now. But looking a little bit bigger picture, what are you guys looking at in the long term? What do you hope that this turns into? What are you looking forward to?
I think we're looking forward to getting through the next 6 months. I think if we can survive this move in our first peak, we can survive anything. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. So I think we're looking forward to just getting to a place of, relative stasis where we have our operational procedures in place, our recruiting process, our safety program process, and it's all tightened and buttoned up, and we can, kind of put some stuff on, relative autopilot and just know how to execute there. But I think, it was always the intention for us to see how we like it and to see if it's something viable as we grow. So I think, that's a bridge we'll cross as we get through these challenges and get through our first peak and catch our breath maybe in January and say, hey, is this something that we want to keep doing? Because it's going to be, it's going to be a longer road to get to the point where we have an ops manager underneath us and get to the point where we're at that size and scale. Do we want to keep going? Or is this, we've done our time and we saw, we could do this. We, scratch the entrepreneurial itch, but maybe, life's taking us a different way. So, I think any good business, and one thing I learned in the corporate world too, is like every company, no matter how stable you think they are, how large they are, they have an exit strategy. Right. So they're not just always thinking about, one path or one path ahead. They're thinking about, spin-offs, carving off, or, in the startup world, it's IPO or sell. So I think you always got to keep all those irons in the fire, because you never know where life's going to take you and how you're going to feel about it, a year from now. So I think that's kind of the very logical and, calculated way we're looking at it.
Yeah, one step at a time. Again, let's get by June, let's get by August, let's get by peak, and then reassess each step of the way.
Well, I appreciate you guys meeting with me. While you're on here and you have this platform, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I think you mentioned a couple other podcasts and or episodes that we mentioned here before. Mentorship's huge. So again, like if anyone wants to, reach out to two veterans, I know there's other veteran contractors out there. It'd be a great way to start a network. I'd love to speak to you. Love to learn, love to share. Likewise, anyone new entering the space and wants to, talk to us and be like, hey, like, what's it like in your first couple of days? Can you juggle this with a full-time job and a family and everything else? This really is about learning from each other, and it is about learning by, osmosis. So that's really my main, pitch and plea is that, hey, we have a network out here. We got a lot of knowledge, a lot of talent. Let's find a way to work together.
Yeah, if there's anything we can do, if there's anything we can share, any insights we can give to help somebody starting out have a smoother experience and have a better transition and start off, gladly help. Gladly provide whatever insights we can share on that. So please reach out.
I want to thank you guys again for spending a few minutes with me on this podcast, and best of luck over the next few months. You've got a lot on your plate, peak season coming up. But look, I got to tell you, I think in the grand scheme of things, I feel like you guys started at a pretty good time. 2022 was a very tough year in the business of FedEx contracting. Earnings were depressed because the cost of fuel and the cost of labor were really, really high in 2022. But I feel like the long-term outlook, I'm very bullish on the FedEx Ground contracting model. And you had already mentioned that right after you bought the business, FedEx came out and announced FedEx One, that they're going to be merging Ground and Express. I think they're going to do away with the Ground and Express, completely. And it's just going to be FedEx. And the people, we think that the plan right now is that first mile and last mile, the pickup and the delivery, it's going to be overwhelmingly completed by you guys, by the FedEx Ground contractors. So, details still to be determined. I'm sure there's challenges and other things that come with it, but more volume has got to be a good thing in the long run. So I appreciate you guys again, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having us on.
Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.